You've done this before. You sat down and you prayed something like, God, I'm giving this to you. I'm not carrying it anymore. And you meant it. You felt lighter walking away. And then somewhere around 2 in the morning, you found it back in your hands. Same worry, same weight, as though you'd never put it down at all. So you did it again and again. And at some point you started wondering whether you were doing it wrong, or whether this verse just doesn't work the way people say it does. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Here's what I want to show you. There is a reason it keeps coming back, and it isn't that you lack faith, or that you're praying incorrectly. It's that the sentence you've been reading is only half a sentence. The English translation quietly hides a piece of grammar, and that missing piece explains exactly why the anxiety returns. There are 3 things buried in this verse. The first one is a picture. The second one will probably sting a little. And the third one is the reason the first 2 are so hard. But start with the man writing it, Peter, writing to Christians scattered across what's now Turkey. People who had lost homes, work, and standing because of their faith. This is a letter to refugees, essentially. People with real reasons to be afraid. And Peter himself is not writing from a position of never having panicked. This is the man who walked on water for about 4 steps and then started sinking. The man who swore he'd die before denying Jesus and then denied him 3 times before sunrise. So this isn't advice from someone who finds anxiety easy to dismiss. It's from someone who knows exactly what it feels like to sink. Now, the word cast in Greek is Epirrhipto. And it does not mean to set something down gently. It means to throw, to hurl, to fling something onto something else. And here's the detail that makes it vivid. This word appears exactly twice in the entire New Testament. Once here, and once in Luke chapter 19, where people take their coats off and throw them onto the back of a donkey so Jesus can ride into Jerusalem. That's the picture Peter chose. Not gently hand your worry to God, not release it mindfully. Take the thing off your own back and heave it onto his. Ancient Greek used this same word for a man carrying a load too heavy for him, throwing it up onto a camel's back. It's a transfer of weight from a creature that can't carry it to one that can. And notice, they didn't throw part of the coat. They threw the whole thing. Peter says all your anxiety, and in the Greek, all is placed first in the sentence for emphasis, not the presentable worries, not the spiritual sounding ones, all of it. Quick note before we keep going. If you've ever read a verse your whole life and wondered what's underneath the English, that's every video on this channel. One verse, one word, what it actually says. Subscribing means you won't miss the next one. Now, the second thing. This is the one that explains why it keeps coming back. Almost everyone quotes verse 7 by itself. But in the Greek, verse 7 is not a sentence. It can't stand alone. It's grammatically attached to verse 6, and when you separate them, you lose the entire mechanism. Here's verse 6. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you. And then verse 7 continues, casting all your anxiety on him. Notice the form of that word, not cast, casting. In Greek, it's a participle, and a participle like this doesn't introduce a new command. It explains how you do the thing in the previous sentence. Which means casting your anxiety is not a separate instruction you can perform on its own. It's how you humble yourself. Sit with that, because it reframes everything. The command is, humble yourself. And the way you do that, the mechanism, is by throwing your anxiety onto God, which means the opposite is also true. Holding on to your anxiety is a form of pride. Now, that sounds harsh, and I want to be careful here, because anxiety is not a moral failure, and this verse is not accusing you of one. There are people whose anxiety is medical, and no amount of theology substitutes for treatment. But hear what the grammar is actually pointing at. Underneath a lot of chronic worry is a quiet assumption. If I stop turning this over, it will get worse. If I stop monitoring it, nobody's watching it. If I don't hold this, it falls. That's not usually experienced as pride. It's experienced as responsibility, as being the reliable one, as love even. I worry because I care. But look at what it assumes. It assumes you are the one holding the situation together, that the outcome runs through your hands. Peter's grammar says, that assumption is the thing that has to go down before the weight can go up. And this explains the 2 a.m. problem exactly. Most of us try to cast the anxiety while keeping the belief that we're ultimately in charge of the outcome. We're throwing the coat onto the donkey while still holding the sleeve. That's why it comes back. Not because the throwing failed, because the humbling never happened. And there's one more detail in verse 6 worth noticing. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. That phrase, in the Old Testament, almost always describes God's power in the Exodus, the hand that broke an empire and brought a nation out of slavery. So the invitation isn't to shrink under a threatening hand. It's to put yourself under the one hand in the universe strong enough to hold what you've been carrying. Which brings us to the last part of the verse, the reason. Because he cares for you. The Greek is melei, and it's a specific kind of caring. It doesn't mean warm feelings towards you in general. It means it matters to him. Your situation is his concern. It's on his list. And this is the quiet hinge of the whole verse. Because here's the honest reason most of us can't throw the coat. We're not fully convinced anyone's going to catch it. Not intellectually. Most people watching this would say, yes, of course God cares. But at 2 a.m, the actual working belief is often something else. God cares about big things, eternal things, not this, not a rent payment or a test result, or whether my kid is okay. And if that's what you believe underneath, you will keep the coat. Of course you will. You don't throw something valuable to someone you're not sure is paying attention. Peter's argument is, he's paying attention. It matters to him. Not the tidy version of your worry, the actual one, the specific one, the embarrassing one. That's why cast and he cares are in the same sentence. The second one is what makes the first one possible. So here's the whole thing back together. Humble yourself, which means stop assuming the outcome runs through your hands. And the way you do that is to take the weight off your own back and throw it onto his. Not set it down politely. Heave it, all of it. And the reason you can is that it genuinely matters to him. Your specific, ordinary, unglamorous version of it. Now, one honest thing before the end. If you've been reading this verse as a technique and it keeps failing, I gently suggest the problem was never your technique. The question isn't how do I cast better? The question is, what would have to be true about God for you to actually let go of this? Because that's the real gap. Not effort, belief about whether anyone's on the other end. One more thing before you go. In one word, what's the thing that keeps coming back at 2 a.m? Just one word in the comments. You'll see quickly that you're not carrying it alone. And if you know someone who's been trying to hand something over for months and keeps finding it back in their hands, send them this. It'll help to know the problem was never their faith. So the next time you find it back on your shoulders at 2 a.m, don't start by trying harder to let go. Start by asking whether you still believe you're the one holding it up. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you.